Currently, there is a purge going on in comics, one of epic proportions, and that it doesn't just stick to people that are being accused of wrongdoing. Now, if you work with somebody, that's a problem. And well, one of the newest people that's being targeted, Mike freaking Mignola. That's right, Mr. Hellboy himself. We're going to look at this. We're going to look at the accusations against Scott Alley. And remember, this is the newest accusation, one of dozens of them that have transpired within the last few weeks. I mean, here people are reaping cancel culture because they decided they would go out and they would placate it. So hey there, now before we get started, this is our second comic, another case for the littlest umbrella. Link is in the description, and we could definitely use your help. See, these cancel culture weirdos, they hate what we do. Why is that? Because we do not kowtow to anyone. We're not beholden to them. We are creating a secondary industry. If you want to help out with that, definitely check out the comic, and more on that at the end of the video. Now, as far as Scott Alley is concerned, these accusations are nothing new. In fact, Dark Horse has heard them for years, but they have never reacted to them because, substantiation is not built on accusation. But here we have an article from the Mary Sue talking about a timeline within the comic book industry of all types of claims. This comes from 2017. And you'll notice back then you have people trying to cancel him, and it works to a degree. He ends up stepping down as editor-in-chief of Dark Horse to become a different title here, executive senior editor, but they don't cancel his career fully. 2017 is not 2020, though, and well, Scott Alley, he's going to lose his job and many associations because of this statement here. I've made the decision to come forward with my own experience of abuse in the comic industry. I'm not the one at fault, and the shame I have felt is not mine to carry. I was assaulted, harassed, and retaliated against by Scott Alley during our tenure at Dark Horse Comics. You'll see the date that this came up as well. Now, when I'm reading through this, I will redact certain words, apologies in advance. That is the platform speaking, not me. So Scott Alley, he harassed me, he assaulted me, and retaliated against me, causing a negative impact on my career. All of these things happened over the course of 14 years. This is a pattern of chronic, escalating, unchecked abuse that was not related to his alcohol use. This was and is illegal behavior, and he needs to be held accountable for. In 1999, in Chicago, Scott assaulted me in the back seat of a minivan filled with our coworkers and colleagues as we drove to have a group work dinner after a long day on the convention floor. Scott was not drunk at the time of this, nor was he drunk on a number of occasions when he groped and harassed me during my time at Dark Horse Comics. On this occasion, our convention crew met up in the hotel lobby shortly after the convention ended for the day to drive to a dinner at our favorite Mexican restaurant. As the shortest person in our group, I was offered the seat in the last row. Scott followed me. When I leaned forward to take my seat, Scott slid his left hand into my waistband and down into my underwear. For the next 10 to 15 minutes, I had to quietly, physically wrestle against Scott to prevent him from forcibly penetrating me with his fingers. I struck my right elbow in his rib cage and braced my left arm on the seat next to me for leverage. He leaned in and whispered, "Shh, relax, relax, relax." I begged him to stop and pressed myself into the seat, my entire body clenched like a fist. He carried on, laughing and joking with the rest of the people in the car, people who included 2 direct bosses, one of the VPs of the company, and a few co-workers, with his hand inside my underwear the entire time. The moment this happened, I was horrified and embarrassed, shocked. I didn't understand what he was doing or why. I couldn't believe he wasn't stopping. But for the entire length of this car ride, his left hand pinched and grasped whatever flesh he could reach, while I struggled and begged him to stop, and while he carried on casually with other people in the car. The only words he said to me were "shh" and "relax," over and over again. I didn't and couldn't ask for help because I expected the other people in the van would have laughed it off if I had called out, "Scott has his hand in my pants." It would have been seen as a joke, a mutual game of grab A in the back seat. When we arrived at the restaurant and the van door opened, Scott released me and gleefully hopped out of the van ahead of me. He walked away quickly and wouldn't look at me until many minutes later as we stood in a group in the lobby waiting to be seated. He laughed, made a silly face, and said, "What?" fought as if he had pulled an innocent prank. I was mortified and in shock. I went into the bathroom, pulled my skirt down, looked in the mirror to see red marks all over my A from how tightly he had been grabbing me. At the time of this assault, I was about 2 years into my career as a publicist at Dark Horse. Scott was one of my closest friends and a beloved coworker, a rising star in editorial. He had recently been pressuring me to take our work-based relationship in a romantic and a different direction. I declined and told him I wanted to maintain our friendship and focus on work. I was married. He was engaged and ready to start a family with his fiancée. I told him my job was incredibly important to me, and I didn't want anything to get in the way of it. He told me we should leave our respective partners and we should become a power couple in the comic industry. I was 26 years old and did not recognize his actions were manipulation and abuse. I thought he was lovesick and awkward in his approach. For the rest of the trip, I tried to placate his pressure for physical interactions, intercepting him with hugs when he tried to kiss, etc. 2 weeks after the assault in the van, 2 weeks during which I reiterated again and again that I did not want to make our relationship this way, he asked me to go to lunch with him to talk about work. While we waited for our lunch, he began to tell me stories about certain types of experiences he had with various women, describing them and their bodies in excruciating detail. He told me about a woman who had so much pubic hair he couldn't find her. He told me about The Last Tango in Paris, which was one of his favorite movies. And when I told him I hadn't seen it, he described, well, let's just say certain scenes in vivid detail. Once again, I was mortified. I couldn't figure out why he was telling me these things. After lunch, as we walked back to the office, Scott stopped, grabbed one of my hands in both of his, and told me that we could have, well, you can see that descriptor there. That way we wouldn't really be cheating on our partners, and we could still maintain this type of relationship. I withdrew my hand from his and told him we would never have that type of relationship. Over time, Scott's physicality toward me and pressure to have that type of relationship with him continued, but it became part of our fabric of everyday existence. I learned how to deal with it. After a few years, I left Dark Horse briefly and was rehired in the editorial department, with Scott offering to be one of my mentors. I became the editor of his creator-owned book and assisted him on a number of horror titles. After 5 months after I was rehired, Scott asked me to join him for work, which I assumed would be related to work. During this lunch, he told me he was still in love with me and was having a hard time working with me because of these feelings. He mentioned to me that he was seeing an occult-based spiritual consultant who was helping him develop a magic spell to release him from these feelings. He told me the spell was working. He would continue to work with me, but he told me I need to keep some distance. After this, our working relationship began to unravel, and I felt the professional repercussions of his feelings for me, as books I'd been planning on working on were reassigned to other editors. Eventually, Scott told me my attitude and approach to work made it impossible for him to be my mentor anymore. I was speaking up about this now because there's an endless stream of stories about this kind of predatory behavior and abuse in the comic industry. After Scott drunkenly assaulted a friend of mine during an industry mixer at San Diego Comic-Con in 2015, he entered rehab and admitted to engaging in abusive behaviors while he was drunk. Not once has he addressed his other predatory behaviors. Not once does he acknowledge the countless horrible things he has done to me and other people he worked with while he's perfectly sober. And every time issues of predation and abuse come to light in comics and questions are asked, whatever happened to Scott Alley, people in high positions of power in this industry, people who have worked with Scott and continue to hire him, speak up in his defense, telling others he doesn't deserve to be lumped in with the abusers because he's changed. He has done his work. He has paid his dues. As someone who suffered physical humiliation at his hands more time than I can count, and whose career was impacted in numerous ways by his turbulent feelings toward me, none of which involved his drinking problem, I am speaking up now to say that Scott has not changed because he has not yet addressed the things he has done and that were not related to drinking. He has done no work. He has paid no dues. And his actions over the long span of his career have deeply and gravely impacted the work and industry professionals who deserve better and deserve to be believed. Now, it took Dark Horse Comics less than a day to respond to this, making sure that this guy no longer has a career. This is their statement about it. We believe, Shauna Gore, effective immediately, Dark Horse Comics will not be working with Scott Alley now or in the future. We apologize to fans, creators, and employees for all the damage and hurt Scott has caused. It is critical that employees feel safe, secure, and supported in the workplace. They should feel safe in making these inexcusable actions known without fear of reprisal. Dark Horse Comics will dedicate itself to ensuring that this will never happen again within our company. Now this, it will have legal ramifications. Why? Because Scott Alley was accused publicly of this. He could actually sue. We'll see exactly how that goes. And on the other side of this, Shauna Gore could also sue as well. Now 12 hours ago, Mike Mignola decided to distance himself from Scott Alley, saying, "I believe Shauna Gore. Given what I've read today, I will be discontinuing work with Scott Alley." But that, it's not enough out there. Oh no, it's never enough. In fact, statements like that, they bring on accusations of culpability from people like Guy Davis, who has worked on Mike Mignola-related projects many a time. You see this concept designer for Shape of Water, Antlers, Crimson Peak, Pacific Rim, Strain, and so on. Yeah, fun times, isn't it? Fun times. Now, what he says here is Dark Horse Comics and Mignola knew of Scott Alley's harassment and toxic behavior, which was publicly reported and commented on by Dark Horse back in 2015, and both continue to work with him. Dark Horse can't force an editor-writer on a creator, let alone Mike, so why did they keep working with him? AKA, you need to explain yourself, Mike, because you know what? You're right in the crosshairs, too. And cancel culture, they're going to roll right at you. They're going to roll at Dark Horse Comics. That first person in that, yeah, that's not going to be enough. And even if you kowtow, even if you beg forgiveness, that's not going to be enough. That's going to be an admission of guilt. And, well, look forward to the ride. That's why you never. In fact, those declarations are going to bring out claims of culpability from people like Guy Davis, who have actually worked on Mike Mignola-related projects as well, which I find to be utterly fascinating to see this stuff play out. I mean, here, Guy Davis, you can see what he credits himself with on Twitter. He says he's a concept designer for Shape of Water, Antlers, Crimson Peak, Pacific Rim, Strain, and on and on. Well, when Mike Mignola makes this statement, I believe Shauna Gore, Guy Davis says, and everyone else who spoke out on Scott Alley back in 2015. Why did you continue to work with him, Mike? Why haven't you canceled him before? That opens you up for cancellation as well, and this, it's not going to stop. Here's another statement as well, and this is just going to continue on and on. Dark Horse and Mignola knew of Scott Alley's harassment and toxic behavior, which is publicly reported and commented on by Dark Horse back in 2015, and both continue to work with him. Dark Horse can't force an editor-writer on a creator, let alone Mike, so why did they keep working with him? They're going to find themselves in damage control. They very well are going to lose support. They're going to have people hammering them from all directions. This stuff, it's just getting started. This is what happens when you go out, you placate cancel culture. You don't ask for due process. And again, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying that anything did or did not happen in this. I'm saying that there is a method of due process. We're talking about accusations that go back to 1999. I mean, really, think about that. 21-year-old accusations, and those coming to light now, yeah, they're going to get you fired. I mean, imagine this landscape in comics. I'm glad that I set out here as an independent, and these people, they have no power over me whatsoever. Now, speaking of independent endeavors, this is our second comic, another case for the Littlest Umbrella. Link is in the description, and we could definitely use your help. See, the same people that are out there canceling folks on Twitter left and right, they try to cancel us as well, but they can't do it. Why? Because we're beholden to no one. When I call for due process, when I say that people need to stop acting and interacting like these folks do, they can't do anything about that, and that makes them crazy. So yeah, if you want to join us in that, you want to build up a viable market that's free of all of these crazies and free of the things that these people are talking about happening behind closed doors, well, join us. We need more of that. And, well, I want your opinions on this, too. Let me end, too, by saying that I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you empowering these endeavors. Without you, none of it works. And these folks, they have let all of this insanity play out here. They are destroying comic books. We need something to walk towards as we walk away, and hopefully you'll walk towards this. But anyhow, thank you. I appreciate you. More videos to come later. Thanks.